Humans have been afraid of caves for as long as we've known they existed. Before fire, before language, before we could name what scared us, we understood that a dark space in the rock meant something else was already living there. Caves are the oldest kind of danger. No light, no room to run, no way to see what's coming. Every culture that lived near mountains, cliffs, or coastline invented something horrible to put inside them. These are the mythical creatures of the cave. Polyphemus is the most famous cave monster in Western literature. He was a Cyclops, a one-eyed giant, and a son of Poseidon. When Odysseus and his crew entered his cave looking for shelter, Polyphemus returned with his flock, rolled a boulder across the entrance that no group of men could move, and trapped them inside. Then he started eating them. 2 men per meal, grabbed and smashed against the cave floor. Odysseus couldn't kill him because only the Cyclops was strong enough to move the boulder. So he got Polyphemus drunk, told him his name was Nobody, and drove a sharpened stake into his eye while he slept. When Polyphemus screamed and the other Cyclopes asked who was hurting him, he shouted, "Nobody!" They left. The next morning, Odysseus and his men escaped by clinging to the bellies of sheep as the blinded giant felt along their backs. The entire thing takes place in a cave you cannot leave. Grendel terrorized the mead hall of King Hrothgar in the Anglo-Saxon poem Beowulf. For 12 years, the creature emerged from the darkness to kill warriors, ripping them apart and dragging pieces back to his lair. Grendel lived in a cave at the bottom of a lake, a place so foul that even hunted deer would rather die on the bank than enter the water above it. Beowulf fought Grendel with no weapons because blades couldn't cut the creature. He tore Grendel's arm off at the shoulder, and the monster fled to its cave to die. But Grendel's mother came for revenge. Beowulf dove to the bottom of the lake, entered the cave, and fought her in the dark with a giant forged sword he found on the wall, the only blade that could cut her. The cave wasn't just where the monsters lived, it was the place where the rules of the surface stopped working. Fafnir was originally a dwarf in Norse mythology. His father, Hreidmar, received a cursed hoard of gold as compensation for the death of one of his sons. The gold carried a curse placed on it by the god Loki, a curse that promised destruction to anyone who possessed it. Fafnir murdered his own father to take the treasure, then retreated into a cave on Gnita Heath and lay on top of it. Over time, his greed transformed him physically. His body twisted and swelled until he became a dragon, a massive serpent guarding a pile of gold he would never spend and could never leave. The hero Sigurd eventually killed Fafnir by digging a trench in the path the dragon used to reach water and stabbing him from below as he crawled over it. When Fafnir died, he warned Sigurd that the gold would destroy him too. Sigurd took it anyway. The curse continued. Trolls in Scandinavian folklore are creatures of darkness. They live inside mountains, under bridges, and deep in caves where sunlight never reaches. In the oldest Norse traditions, trolls were enormous, slow, and dangerous, strong enough to throw boulders and mean enough to eat anyone who wandered too close to their territory. Their greatest weakness was sunlight. Direct exposure turned them to stone. That's why, according to the folklore, the Scandinavian landscape is scattered with strange rock formations. They aren't rocks, they're trolls that stayed out too long. Norwegian stories often describe travelers hearing voices deep inside mountains, laughter and singing that sounded almost human, but wasn't. those who followed the sound into the cave didn't come back. The Jorogumo is a creature from Japanese folklore whose name translates roughly to binding bride. She is a spider that has lived for 400 years and gained the ability to take human form, appearing as a beautiful woman. She makes her home in caves, waterfalls, and abandoned spaces, and she lures men inside with her appearance and voice. Once they enter, she wraps them in silk and feeds at her leisure. In some versions, she plays a lute to disguise the sound of her weaving. In others, she sends small, fire-breathing spiders to distract or confuse her prey. What makes the Jorogumo disturbing isn't the spider, it's the patience. She doesn't chase, she waits, sometimes for years, in the dark, for someone to walk in on their own. The Nagas are serpent beings from Hindu and Buddhist mythology who rule a vast underground kingdom called Patala. They are depicted as enormous cobras or half-human figures with the lower bodies of snakes. Their kingdom is filled with gems and gold that glow in place of sunlight. The Nagas are guardians of sacred knowledge, water sources, and spiritual power. In some traditions, they are wise and protective. In others, they are territorial and deadly, flooding villages or sending plagues when disturbed. The entrance to their world is always underground, through caves, wells, or cracks in the earth that most people walk past without knowing what lies beneath. Cacus was a fire-breathing giant from Roman mythology who lived in a cave on the Aventine Hill, one of the 7 hills of Rome itself. The ground around his cave was permanently scorched, and the entrance was littered with the bones and skulls of his victims. When Heracles was passing through the area with cattle he had taken as part of his labours, Cacus stole several of them and dragged them backwards into his cave so their tracks pointed the wrong direction. Heracles heard the stolen cattle bellowing inside the rock, ripped the top off the cave with his bare hands, and killed Cacus by strangling him until his eyes burst. The Romans built an altar on the spot and worshipped Heracles there for centuries. The knockers are creatures from Cornish and Welsh mining folklore. Miners who worked deep underground reported hearing tapping sounds coming from inside the walls, rhythmic knocking that seemed to follow them through the tunnels. Some believed the knockers were helpful spirits, tapping near rich veins of ore to guide miners toward valuable deposits. Others believed they were something worse, the ghosts of miners who had died in collapses, trapped inside the rock forever, knocking to be let out. In some stories, the knockers turned hostile if they weren't respected. Miners who failed to leave a portion of their food for the knockers would hear the tapping grow louder, closer, and more frantic until the tunnel collapsed around them. Every mythology has a version of the same fear, the fear that the earth has spaces inside it that were never meant for us, that something has been living in the dark far longer than we've had the tools to see it, and that the worst place to meet a monster is the one place where you can't run. Subscribe if you want to see every underworld in mythology explained next, and tell me in the comments which cave creature disturbed you the most. I'll see you in that video.